What if Michael Bay made Grand Theft Auto? Before filing for bankruptcy, Midway had been bleeding money for years, tens of millions of dollars every year. And with the writing on the wall, the majority shareholder, Sumner Redstone, sold off 87% of the stock, worth over $30 million for $100,000, massively devaluing and destabilizing Midway as it was already struggling. And facing hundreds of millions of dollars in debt, Midway was forced to file for bankruptcy. Even major wins like Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe didn't make enough money for Midway to pay off what it owed. And it didn't help that the company had already announced plans to lay off a quarter of its workforce. But bankruptcy is a long and slow process, and Midway was already working on a game, Wheelman. Announced in February of 2006, Wheelman was actually one of 3 titles that Midway was collaborating with MTV on. And after several delays, Wheelman was finally released actually after Midway filed for bankruptcy. Ubisoft even stepped in to help co-publish the game in North America around the time of the bankruptcy filing, while Midway handled the release in Europe. And in fact, this game was supposed to be part of an entire Vin Diesel based cinematic universe. There were going to be tie-in movies that never happened, with sequels that never happened. And after playing Wheelman, I can kind of see why. You play Vin Diesel playing Vin Diesel in every movie Vin Diesel has ever been in, made in part by Vin Diesel's company. Okay, you're actually Milo Burick, an undercover CIA officer working in Barcelona to find a briefcase full of intelligence documents that a bunch of rival gangs are trying to get their hands on. And Vin Diesel plays the stereotypical gruff action hero with witty one-liners and a gruff voice that sounds like he smokes a pack a day.
Then you and I would have a problem. Haven't met a door yet I couldn't open. What's this world coming to? Even an ambulance ain't safe?
And the plot is the standard trying to play all the gangs against each other until they turn on each other and you take them all down at once. But it's played off in a really stupid way. For example, you are given a mission by one gang to go steal a car from another gang. So for your cover, you drive up in a car belonging to a different rival gang. But then you immediately get out of the car, kill everyone, steal the car you're supposed to steal, and then drive it back into the territory of the gang that hired you while being followed by the gang you just stole it from. And since Vin Diesel is working for all of the gangs, they all know who he is, and they know who hired him to steal the car because that's where he takes it back to. But this is not a game that you're supposed to think about. You're just supposed to drive fast cars, crash them into things, and enjoy the slow motion camera shots. Because that's basically all that this game is about, driving, which I'll give the game credit for. It is very satisfying. The controls are tight, the destruction is satisfying, although it starts with a destruction cam or whatever. I don't remember what it's called. Basically, when you destroy a car, it goes into a slow motion cinematic shot of that car being destroyed. But I eventually turned the cinematic camera off because it was really distracting to be in the middle of a high-speed chase and have everything stop for a minute to get a close-up of a car flipping over. And the driving portions start to get a little bit repetitive. Like most games like this, you get abilities. One of them is called Skyjack that lets you steal other cars while you're driving. And the other two are basically the Red Dead Redemption slow move shooting. One lets you slow things down and shoot things that are in front of you. And the other slows things down so you can spin your car around and shoot things that are behind you. You build up a focus bar to use these abilities by driving faster, driving into traffic, or performing stunts. And it takes a little while to get a handle on these abilities, but once you get into the flow, it's really satisfying. Smashing into cars, going into slow motion to take out drivers, switching cars on the fly to get to your destination. It all flows really well, it's all fun, it's exciting, till about halfway through the game. And then it kind of starts to become samey and repetitive. In fact, I could only sit down and play this game for about an hour at a time because I knew exactly what was going to happen every time I picked up the controller. Drive to a place, get a thing, or kill someone, and then drive back being chased by infinitely spawning enemies, smashing into cars, and shooting them with my abilities. That is basically every single mission. There are a few set pieces that mix things up a little bit. There's one mission where you have to take down a subway car. There's another mission where you have to kill a guy in this sort of demolition derby style fight, which was kind of fun. And there's a fast travel system that lets you jump directly from mission to mission to keep the action going. And even though the fast-paced car driving does get a little dull towards the end, it's still the best part of this game because occasionally the game makes you get out of the car and the on-foot missions are boring. The game doesn't really have any shooter mechanics. There's no cover, there's no grenades, there's no abilities. Most of the shooter missions are you just walking forward and then shooting identical looking enemies anytime they pop out of cover. The city where all this high-paced car action takes place is empty. There are a few citizens walking around, there are a few cars around, but Barcelona, the whole city, feels empty and dead. The carjack mechanic that I mentioned that lets you jump from one car to the next, it's pretty much essential in a lot of these missions due to the infinitely spawning enemies. Whatever car you're in is going to get destroyed, so you need to switch to different cars just to survive. But there are some missions that don't let you switch cars. Those are the ones that you have to do over and over, because your car is not going to survive long enough to make it to whatever objective you're trying to make it to. Luckily, most of these have a checkpoint at about the midway, and when you use the checkpoint, it'll fully heal your car, which is a godsend, because I don't think many of these missions would be possible without it. But this game's worst offense? Rubber banding. If you're chasing a car or a truck and you get too far behind, it'll be nice enough to wait for you to catch up. One of those abilities that I mentioned is a speed boost, but if I was being chased, if I would use the speed boost, the cars chasing me would keep up, so there's no point in using it. Those infinitely spawning enemies that I talked about, there's one mission where you have to lose the cops. You're in a truck and you can't change vehicles, and the cops are infinitely spawning, and they always show up right where you're going. Doesn't matter how many you destroy or how many you kill, they just keep coming. It took me 3 tries just to get this one mission down. The whole game just keeps jumping from dull missions to fun missions to frustrating missions. There's no difficulty curve, there's no arch, it's just random spikes here and there. And I'm sure a lot of these problems probably would have been fixed if Midway wasn't in its dying days when it was trying to push it out. If they had the money and the time and the resources, I'm sure a lot of these problems would have been ironed out before release. But as it is, Wheelman is a somewhat fun car combat game mixed with a flat, boring shooter made by a studio that was being sold off piece by piece as it was being shipped. I think people like to remember Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe as being the last game Midway ever made because it's a higher note to go out on. The game was a success, but Wheelman was the real ending. A messier, less remembered ending, and a much better symbol for how Midway actually went out. Everyone was just playing their own side, and in the end, they all went down. See you next time.